Welcome to Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. You're going to be host this session, and this is the 15th edition of our Taxpayer Alert programs. And every one we've had distinguished guests, people that are really interesting. Our guest this time is Charity Maness. She owns a newspaper called the Copperopolis Gazette, or Copper Gazette, and she's also doing some other interesting things in the community. Charity, how did you get into the online newspaper business?
It actually started many years ago with Mike Council. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He had Copper Online, and he took me under his wing and tried to teach me what he knew, but at that point I thought I knew everything, and and so from there it just blossomed.
I see. Well, one of the things that you've been involved with, well, a little bit about yourself. You have interesting hobbies. You had alpacas, herbalism, sewing. And of course, you're a veterans advocate, but we'll get into that a little further. Photography, nature, and grandbabies.
Yes.
How many grandbabies?
4.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Four wonderful grandbabies. Yes.
You worked at the Pine Tree, which is a competing publication, and you write humor columns and you covered events. Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy that?
I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy writing humor, and it was nice for them to give me a break and give me the opportunity to do that, and I think everybody enjoyed reading it. It was called Welcome to the Country. It was a humor column. It was all about the foibles that go on moving to the country from the city, being a city girl, and everybody can seem to relate to that. And then that moved on to covering events, and again, I just really enjoyed that.
So I understand, in addition to your paper or your online newspaper that you own and you edit, you also are a reporter for the Enterprise, and you cover Veterans Affairs. Is that true?
Correct. The Enterprise just blessed me with a column called the Veterans Corner. It's an honor to have this column. I write anything and everything that has to do with veterans. I cover veteran legislation, veteran interviews, different veteran groups and affiliations that are in the county. Just last week, I interviewed 2 seniors who their senior project is veteran awareness and advocacy, and I can't say enough about the veterans in our community, and I want to do everything I can to help support them. So this is a great outlet for me.
I understand you have a son in the Marine Corps?
Actually, he's done his 8 years. He was in the Marine Corps. He was in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I also have a son who's in the Army National Guard.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah.
So
yeah.
You certainly have an interest in veterans.
Yeah.
I understand that you were involved with the parade. Is that correct?
Yes, I started the very first Veterans Day parade in Copperopolis, not last year, the year before. That was really fun. The county offices were amazing. They just walked me through it, helped me fill out all the forms. And I think we had about 15 to 20 entrants, not bad for the very first one. Last year, I think we had something like 35 or 40 entrants. And I think it's wonderful. I believe it's the only Veterans Day parade in Calaveras County. I'm not sure.
I understand you're working on a veterans court or something?
Yes, I'm trying to form a veterans court in Calaveras County. I planted the seed about a year ago. I got not a very warm reception this year. I'm getting a much warmer reception. It is a collaborative court effort that requires the judge, the DA, the defense, the probation, behavioral health, sheriff's department, and the Veterans Affairs Office all working together. And so far, I've got all the players on board. Everybody's ready to go. I just need to find a little bit of funding for the training, and I think we're going to be off to a good start, hopefully, if it all works out well. I go before the CCP in March to ask for funding for that. If I can't get it through AB 109 funds, I will find it elsewhere.
What's a CP?
CCP is the board that oversees the AB 109 fund distributions, the realignment funding.
Okay, I see.
So how a veteran court works, let's say you're a veteran and you're arrested on a drug charge. Make a long story short, as opposed to going through traditional therapy, traditional drug therapy, you would actually go through therapy through the VA. So the VA would then address your underlying issues, why you are doing drugs, why you're addicted to drugs, and also treat the drug problem. So it not only saves money to the county, which is a very good point, because it saves on the counseling, because they'll be going through the VA, but it also helps on the recidivism rate. They aren't going to be coming back if they're actually treated for the base issue. And it helps the veteran because it gives them back their honor and respect for themselves and allows them to be the person that they know they can be. So,
Do we have many cases like that in our county?
we don't have raw numbers right now. I can't get a count from the different departments because they've never counted veterans before. Right now, the ref numbers in this fiscal year that has processed through the jail is 18. Doesn't seem very high, but think if we can get half of those to not recommit. Think of the savings. Think of the, not only that, the family that you're helping. Because these people, they're going to have, wives, husbands, children, and think of how you're affecting not only that person, but the community that they're in. So,
On the AB 109, I think there's been some criticism from the Sheriff's Department and also from the District Attorney as to what the consequences are unfolding with it, where it may be doing more harm than good. Although it may be good if, for veterans, but apparently they have a lot of misgivings based on what's been happening.
I think it was thrown together so quickly, this is simply my opinion, because of the prison overcrowding, that they had to do something immediately, and this was their Band-Aid. And I think that the counties were left kind of holding the bag, trying to figure out how to deal with this, trickle-down theory.
Right.
And it's going to be a long-term process.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work either, but it's what we have to work with right now.
Yeah, true. I guess the main problem is that we have too many people in jails in the state, and they have overcrowding, and the court told the governor that he had to reduce the population. So,
Well, the voters went to the polls last election and changed the 3 strikes law. So now a lot of people are coming back through the court system to have an appeal on their 3rd strike, because sometimes the 3rd strike was so minimal, I was going to say minimal, that it really doesn't mean that they should be in prison for 25 years. So that in itself is going to cause a reduction in the prisons. But it seems to be a revolving door, but they're going in faster than they're going out.
I heard that as much as 80 or 85% of the people in prison are in there for drug-related charges that have to do with marijuana and other illegal drugs.
I don't know.
And then with California, I don't know what's going to happen in this election, but they seem to be getting closer to not only having medical marijuana, but maybe marijuana treated just like alcohol and other recreational drugs.
Right.
It would seem I like wine. And I would hate to see that prohibition against wine, because then I would become an outlaw.
Right.
I'd make my own wine.
Right. As would I.
Well, anyway, so you also you write books.
Yes.
And one of them is quite famous locally, and that's Love Letters from NAM. Tell us a little bit about that book. And I understand that you have one here. I don't know if we can get a picture of that with the middle camera or not. They might try.
It's called It's Lonely Here in Hell, Love Letters from Nam.
Yeah.
And this is actually Rick Ryan, the Walking Man of Murphys, went on a trip to Washington, D.C. and took James D. Piper's picture off of the Vietnam Wall for me for the cover of this book. And this book is based on James D. Piper's love letters home to his wife. And he was killed in action. And so what I did was I correlated each of his love letters with what was happening on that day in Vietnam. I used Pentagon papers, declassified CIA documents, LBJ's diaries, the Armchair General who puts out military history, and Vietnam magazine. They allowed me full use of all of their information to also collaborate. So it's not only an emotional journey, it's a historical journey. Some people can find it a dry read. I don't. I find it fascinating.
Well, I think my wife cried, so that
Yes.
shows that you're a good writer.
Yes. The most difficult part was when I was opening the letters. They weren't in order, but when I knew that the next letter was when he went into country, it took me 3 weeks to open that letter because I knew the ending of this story and I didn't want this story to end this way because I was really becoming to like this young man.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for me to finish. And then, of course, I worked with his family to make sure they were all okay with this, and they were very supportive. And hence, our VFW post in Copperopolis is the James D. Piper VFW post.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, because this is Mickey's husband,
Yeah.
who passed away.
That's
So-
now you have some other books.
Yes, I have a couple of romances, a couple humor books, and then a memoir, which is, again, humor, because if you can't, we raised 4 children. I got my niece when she was 13 and my nephews when they were 9 and 11. If you cannot raise children with humor, you don't survive.
You can't take yourself too serious.
No. And you know, it's just mud, just hose it off, you're going to survive. So.
One of the things that I think you were doing was homeschooling.
I
And
did.
I really like that.
Well, I did independent study. I did homeschool with one of my children, but I did independent study with the older ones. And that was great because I got a lot of support from a teaching staff if I needed it here. They all liked that. My oldest son was 15 and a half when he graduated, and he was in Columbia College at 15 and a half.
The Calaveras County Taxpayer Association hosted a composition contest and a poster contest for Constitution Day a while back, and we had Congressman
McClintock.
Tom McClintock attend our luncheon, in which we honored the winners. And I think your boy,
My youngest,
yeah,
Marshall one,
yeah,
covering the Sixth Amendment.
that
Yeah,
was so
I
cool.
think it's a 50-year anniversary this year or last year of the Gideon, the defense of the indigent, that amendment. So yeah, he enjoyed writing that.
We are starting a program, the Taxpayer Association is starting a program to try to get constitutions, an interesting version of the Constitution that has a lot of interesting facts in with it. It's a booklet that's a little bigger than just the Constitution, and it's very, very interesting. And we're hoping to get this presented to our Board of Supervisors. We already have donations from volunteers. We bought 100 of them. We want to get to be 1,000 as we go along.
Oh, that'd be nice.
And we especially would get more support. But we'd like to present these to the Board of Supervisors, then the Planning Commission, then after that, all the Board of Education people.
Oh, that would be great.
And then after that, the teachers. Then after that, the high school kids. If we can get enough money and enough enthusiasm,
Yeah.
we'll have a knowledge base in Calaveras County of the Constitution.
I think you should start them off earlier. Get them in 5th or 6th grade.
Well, we only have a handful of volunteers,
Right.
but we're excited about it. So,
It's a
next,
good idea.
Yeah, next Board of Supervisors meeting, we're going to try to make a presentation and write a news release. Writing a news release is so tedious for me. It takes me over an hour. Then I make a mistake and have to do it over.
Yeah.
And I really admire people like you that can just take a pen and write.
Well,
And
I write because I can't speak. That's why when you asked me to be on this show, I'm
so, looking ahead, what do you see happening with on the Veterans Court you're working on, and then there's 2 books that are, I think, romantic books, and the other book is.
you mean my current ones that I've already published, or the ones that I'm working on now?
Okay, the one you published I know about is Letters from Nam.
Right, and then I published one From Positive Test to Empty Nest, which is my memoirs.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
And then Welcome to the Country, and that's the humor one about living in the country. And then Hopefully, Faithfully, and Prince Charming. Prince Charming, by the way, is the dog. Those are all romance. Those are all romance novels. But the one I'm currently working on, now that this has gotten in my blood, it's called In Their Words, Vietnam. And I'm interviewing Vietnam veterans and telling their story in their words. And it's fascinating. And it's actually cathartic to them. It's healing. It's and they, I don't know, they just enjoy being heard.
Yeah, there was the left wing in our country were very powerful at that time. Sometimes I think that the Vietnam War did more to grow the left than anything else that ever happened because of the anti-war sentiment and the anti-war movement. During the time of the Vietnam War, I remember getting signatures on a petition to stop aid and trade with North Vietnam. Believe it or not, our government was sending all kinds of goods and money to Czechoslovakia, which went on ships to North Vietnam, and then this material was used to kill our own people, and the media wouldn't cover it. And
much like what's happening today in the Middle East, if you think about it. And here's the thing, I was never taught about Vietnam. My children were never taught about Vietnam. It's not in our history books, and if it is, it's 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
If my generation had been taught, it's my generation that's making the decisions that are affecting the world now.
Right.
Would we have made the same mistakes or the same decisions
Right.
that have been made recently? I question that.
Yeah.
You know, we have to learn from our history. We have to learn from our mistakes, but if we're not taught our history, we can't learn from it.
Oh, that's so true, and that's why the media is so valuable in keeping our country free, at least in my opinion.
Yes.
And I think the Taxpayer Association, just about all of us do agree on that. We need to support our First Amendment and then not muzzle our newspaper reporters. And so, on the do you still have alpacas?
I do.
And
I shear them and I spin their fiber and I knit and weave with it.
how many alpacas do you have?
I only have 2 because I only need 2. I get 11 pounds off of one of them. 11 pounds of fiber, that's a lot of fiber.
Now, are they boy and girl?
No, boys.
Okay, so you can't do a romance novel on the alpacas.
No, I don't want any Korea. I don't want any babies. No.
Now, we do have a romance novel that involves a dog.
Yeah, Prince Charming.
Okay,
He's a police dog.
all right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The articles with the Enterprise on Veterans Corner. What do you cover with that? Is it
Well, so far I've only had 2 columns out.
Okay.
The first one was to basically introduce myself and explain what I was going to be doing, and then it also gave the statistics of the veteran population in this county, which is approximately 12%, 5,498.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know
And
that.
that's just accounted through the VA. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've gone to the VA or they could be active military also. Tuolumne County, I think, has 8,000 something, but between the 2 counties, they're saying there's approximately 1,500 that are unaccounted. So we could have 6,200 to 6,500 in this county. And I think it's an underserved population, to be honest with you. We have one veteran service officer who works her little hiney off and doesn't have a whole lot of hours to do what she does. And I don't think that they get the services they need here. Luckily, we have the Sonora VA. Thank goodness they built that. Otherwise, they'd be going down to Palo Alto, Livermore, and so instead they just choose not to get treatment at all.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Well,
can't drive it for
I'm a
them.
veteran from the Navy, but I don't think I'm on any list with the Veterans Administration.
See, if you're not counting, yeah. You need to be counted. You be heard.
One of the things that the Copper Gazette does is cover some of the local things going on. Tell us a little bit of highlights of what you've done with that.
I actually started it because I constantly heard the complaints, and it wasn't that any of the newspapers up here don't cover the good things. It's just you always hear people say, there's nothing good in the news, nothing good in the news. So I decided I was just going to start, basically, people would call it a fluff articles, but I don't. I highlight children in their senior projects. I highlight kids who won trophies. There was just a young man who competed in the Sacramento golf tournament. I think he's 4th grade. You know, that's wonderful. And he's from Copperopolis. And this week, each day I put in an essay, a Kindness Hero essay from the school. Next week, I'm doing Black History Month essays from the kids in the school. It's just highlights how wonderful the community really is. Yeah, there's crime. Yeah, there's things that are going on, but why not highlight the good? There's so much good outweighing the bad.
Yeah, I was thinking about in Copperopolis we have a lodge on Lake Tulloch, and for years and years and years, that place was just bustling, bringing people in. I think they even had weddings there. and now it's closed, and I don't know the full story why that cannot be productive, and
Well, there's a Prop 41 coming up on the ballot, and it's reallocating some of the CalVet money, because there was $900 million allocated for CalVet home loans, and they're reallocating $600,000 of it to build affordable housing dwellings where multiple vets can live, or offset rent for 6 months. Just because the guy's coming home, there's no employment. There's no way to, they need rental help, not buying a home help, because they don't have a job, they can't qualify. So my first thought was, buy the resort.
Oh, that'd be
Turn
great.
that into a veteran home.
They'd have a party, they wouldn't quit.
And then that'll never work, but that was the first thing that came to mind.
Oh,
So
wow.
I don't know I have no idea what they have planned for the resort.
I heard that they had a bond issue with, I forget how many $1 million, but quite a bit, and that they would have to get a referendum or go back to the voters to use that for a different purpose, because apparently they went ahead and they borrowed the money and it's sitting there, and they have some limit as to what to charge an interest rate for the vets on the CalVet. And,
Right.
And so it has to be resolved, but I think any kind of reasonable thing with that money, even returned to the taxpayers, would probably be approved by the electorate.
I believe so. Some people are concerned about the administrative cost, but I think the benefits are going to outweigh any administrative cost. There are no jobs for these guys when they come home. Nobody's hiring snipers. I mean, Oakland PD should probably consider that, but nobody's hiring snipers. So it's very difficult to find a job, and there's not a whole lot of job training, and their skill sets just aren't set for civilian life. So if they can help them with a rental for a little while so that they can find a job, but they certainly can't qualify for a home loan if they don't have a job. So
yeah, it's true. You have to have income to make the payments.
correct. So I think personally, I'm supporting it. I am, and I'm usually not terribly vocal on, political things, but I am supporting this one.
There's another bond issue that was passed, and this one's a little closer to home. This is for the Copperopolis School. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, the Mark Twain School District.
Mm-hmm. Measure K, I believe that was?
Yeah, and it passed, and they have over $1 million that they're holding. They borrowed it, and it's sitting in the bank, but the cost that they pay for the bond in interest is much more than what they receive from the interest from the bank.
Right.
And they can't invest it in anything that would have a higher interest rate, because it might be more dangerous or not as secure as just the accounts that they have now. And I think the Bond Oversight Committee had some discussion about finding out what the cost to the taxpayers is by holding that large amount of money. Also, the question came up of, if they're not going to build a school, maybe in the future they might, and then they might need the money.
Right.
So I think most of the
well, and then the argument also is we don't have the population for a school, but we're busting at the seams in Copper. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but we actually had to bus children up to Mark Twain because we had too many. And not only that, more than half of the population of 7th and 8th graders is from Copperopolis. So we have the population. I just think it's too expensive to hire that much staff for two separate facilities.
Yeah.
So. But we do have land. I believe in the Oak Creek Canyon the ranch area was designated land for a school and for a fire department. And I believe Mark Twain still owns 20 acres next to Black Creek for a middle school.
Yeah, I understand that's true.
So, yeah, I'm out of the loop on the school issues because the kids are now grown up.
You don't have little ones, unless the alpaca would go down to the school.
I used to put them in my car and take them to the school. I used to teach weaving at the school.
Oh, really?
So in order to teach weaving, I had to show them what they were weaving with. So I would put the alpaca in the minivan and take it down there, and they would all pet the alpaca. This is back in the good old days.
Oh, that's interesting. Now you've raised 4 of your own children.
John and I have 4 children together.
And a few others. What does a few others mean?
Well, my niece Ariella came to live with us when she was 13, and English was her second language. She came from Israel, and she'd only been here about a year, and she blossomed living with us. She went from very poor grades to, because she moved from Israel to Colorado, and Colorado has social advancement. Regardless of whether you do well, you just go to the next grade. And she did well here. We put her back quite a few grades, and she did well. And then we got my husband's two nephews for a little under a year. They were 9 and 11, so we were the clown car when we pulled up to the school. All these kids kept piling out, but it was fun. It was fun.
Now, I understand your husband is in, not law enforcement, but in the legal part of it?
He works for the private defender program in San Mateo County. He's the chief investigator there.
I see.
So, and San Mateo County has a private defender program as opposed to a public defender program. Private defender being that everybody that is not administration is contracted. So you're actually getting some pretty top-rate attorneys defending people because they already have their own practice elsewhere, and they're just doing this on the side.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. And you were married 26 years.
Yes, last November, 26 years.
You look hardly 26 years old. It's hard to believe you're married that long. Now, you had some experience overseas.
Yes.
We have a couple of minutes. Maybe just highlight on what you saw and what was reported in our press, because we are interested in what the press is doing.
Well, I had an interesting aha moment. I went to Israel right after the first Persian Gulf War. I went in September of '91. And while our media over here was saying how wonderful Itzhak Shamir was and how amazing he was, when I went over there, they had red circles with slash marks over his face and horrible propaganda about him because they felt like they had been betrayed. They were sitting in their homes with gas masks on, and he was doing nothing to retaliate because the U.S. asked him not to, and he said, okay, if you'll send over your missiles, your Patriot missiles to knock down the Scuds, I won't retaliate, because the U.S. was concerned of a more World War III episode. But the people of Israel were not happy. They were very upset. And so when I came back to America and they're still touting how wonderful he is, that's when I first realized that sometimes you have to read between the lines.
Yeah.
And it's really important to have a free press.
Yeah.
And it's important to ask questions. Yeah. Always question what you read. Just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true.
I really understand that. And also, it's so important to only deal with the truth and to keep the opinions in the editorial page and the news honest and balanced. On that could go on the front page and be real news. Well, we're coming to the end of our program now, and it's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, or our viewing audience, we invite you to come back for Taxpayer TV and also go to our website, which is calaveras.taxpayers.org. And we'd love to have you. And think about the Constitution.